Find us faithful. We've been celebrating Memorial Day through this whole service, and we've heard again and again this idea of being found faithful. We're looking as a church at a stewardship drive coming in the next 3 weeks, and again we're thinking about what that really means, and what I'm going to tell you it means. It means to find us faithful. Living our lives as disciples is about finding us faithful. So I was trying to think, how to blend all this in. And when you try to blend in Memorial Day and Stewardship Drive and worship and all these different things going on around us, sometimes a pastor's head just does this. But I'll be honest, not today. I'm going to teach us something really pretty simple about being found faithful. It begins with the decision to be a person of faith and to be a follower of Jesus. And we're going to start there with the presupposition that you all have made that decision, that you're going to follow Jesus. And what does that mean? How can we find, or how can we be found faithful? I'm going to tell you that there are three things that we can look at that can help us determine whether or not we're being found faithful. So I'm going to ask you to repeat these three things after me. The first is, repeat after me, time, talent, and treasure. Okay, there you got it. When you look at time, talent, and treasure, we can decide, we can know whether we will be found faithful. Sounds so simple. Time, talent, treasure. You've all heard that phrase before, right? And it's always somehow attached to a stewardship drive. But as soon as people talk about having a stewardship drive, people think, well, you're just going to talk about money. And yes, we're going to talk about money. But that's not all. Because that's not all that God has given you, is it? God's given you time. God's given you talent. God's given you treasure. And God calls us to be found faithful with all of them. So I was trying to think about how I could help us understand that, and so I thought I would tell you a story. When I was 6 years old, none of you were there, by the way, but when I was 6 years old, I was introduced to public school. I went into first grade. You see, you all, some of you may know, but there are reasons I can't cut on a line or color within the lines or follow directions always really well. It's because I didn't have kindergarten. It's true, I didn't go to kindergarten. But I went to first grade. I went to first grade, and my teacher was Mrs. Bauer. Now, I looked for a picture of Mrs. Bauer, and I even put out on Facebook to my Hermiston friends, does anybody have a picture of Mrs. Bauer? And sure enough, one person did, because she was in first grade with Mrs. Bauer the year after me, so that would have been a long time ago. And she sent it to me, and so I tried to clip it out so it was a class picture. I couldn't get a good enough picture to put it on the screen, because if I did that, she would come back from the grave and probably haunt me. But Mrs. Bauer was my first grade teacher. And she loved me. She did. She belonged to First Christian Church, which is where I went to church. And so it was kind of interesting because I would see her Monday through Friday for class, and then on Sunday morning too. And on Sunday morning, she would love me even more, I think, when she saw me. And I'll be honest, I always thought she loved me best. I still believe that. There's nobody else here to defend her. But Mrs. Bauer was the one our praise team just sang about. Oh, may those who come behind us find us faithful. And that was her life. Mrs. Bauer was born in 1906. She lived until 1988. And she lived an amazing life. She had gotten married, and her husband was killed in the Second World War. She never remarried after that, but she became a teacher, and she taught at West Park Elementary School, I think, for 47 years. And she loved coming to church on Sunday morning and looking across over at where all the kids were sitting. He says, there's that Davy Bondurant. I taught him how to read or how to do addition or subtraction. Whatever it was she wanted to say, because she could say anything she wanted. And you could almost always get a hug from Mrs. Bauer. It didn't matter if it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday or Sunday. And she taught until 1980, maybe 79. I think the year I graduated from high school was the last year she taught publicly. And she was faithful. She taught in the public schools. You all know that that's not just an easy job. It's never been an easy job. Teaching other people's children who've learned bad habits at home. Now, none of you ever had bad habits at home, right? But she would come to church. And I remember that Pastor Jack told the story that he asked her if she could be a Sunday school teacher. And she said yes. But she says, I'll be a Sunday school teacher, but I want to be in charge of the Christian Education Committee. Jack went, yes, a twofer. She says, because I don't only want to teach Sunday school, but I want to help our Sunday school teachers be better teachers. We had great Sunday school. And every Sunday school teacher in the Hermiston school had to go through training with Mrs. Bauer, which meant you spent 6 to 9 to 13 weeks teaching Sunday school with Mrs. Bauer. And you met with her on Saturday before the Sunday school. And you talked about what you were going to teach the children, and you designed the class, and you did all those things. And I will tell you that at one point there were at least 20 Sunday school teachers for children and youth, and all of them had been trained by Mrs. Bauer. Do you want to think that we didn't have great Sunday school at First Christian Church in Hermiston? We had fabulous Sunday school. She gave her time. She gave her time to that church when it would have been easy for her to say, man, I teach every day. I need Sundays just to recuperate. She never did. And she gave her talent. She taught teachers to be teachers. She taught children. I still remember Owen Anson, who was the teacher of the 5th grade Sunday school class, complaining about having to go learn to be a Sunday school teacher because he had already been a Sunday school teacher. But when he came on as a volunteer again, they said, oh, you have to go work with Mrs. Bauer. So he went. You know how men can be sometimes, begrudgingly. I went. He says, she taught me things I never knew about teaching. She gave her talent. And she gave her treasure. Now, you all know that teachers go into teaching to make millions, right? Well, after her husband died, she was left with the house they had, and she worked for the public schools, and she also worked part-time as a cook to help pay off the bills, and pretty soon the house was hers. It was a great house. Really wasn't that great of a house, but it had one redeeming factor. It had an indoor swimming pool. Her husband had built it. And in this house, one of the things that happened is I grew up, I went to work for my dad, who's a builder, and at the point I was in school, he was doing pools, and she would have trouble with her pool, so my dad would send me over to take care of the pool. And she talked to me about going into the ministry. She talked to me about giving my life and effort to the church, and she talked to me about wanting to make it clear that should I go off to college and not be able to pay for it, that I shouldn't ever really worry about it. That she would see what she could do to help. I was a teenager. I didn't know what she was really saying. It just kind of went by. Oh, yeah. So then I went off to college, and Jack called me into the office one day. She says, you need to know something that's happened at First Christian Church over the last 15 years or so. She says, I said, what's that? And he says, well, when you get to NCC, you're going to get a scholarship. They had my attention at that. He says, yeah, May Bauer has established a scholarship at Northwest Christian College. He says, now it probably won't pay everything, but you know, it's going to pay a lot. So you need to send a thank you note when you get the check. I sent the thank you note when I got the check. And I thought, how can she do this? She's a public school teacher. And at that point, there were 5 of us from that church attending Northwest Christian College, and we all got the same amount. So we all wrote thank you notes. She would write us notes during the school year. I give her credit for my really bad handwriting, by the way, because I couldn't hardly read hers either. Dear Davy, I don't know what you're learning about this week, but I want you to pay close attention to what they're telling you, because you're going to change people's lives. You're going to make a difference. The world's going to be different because of you. Every week, every 3 weeks, there'd be a letter, a note, or a card encouraging us and telling us how good we were going to be. The world needs more May Bauers. I graduated from undergraduate school, and I went back to see her and thank her. Her health was not very good when I got back there in 1984. But I went in and I just said, thank you for helping me through college. And she said, now don't you waste it. Not a chance. I'll be good, Mrs. Bauer. I'll do. She said, oh, and by the way, since you've graduated from college, you don't have to call me by Mrs. Bauer anymore. You can call me May. I said, thank you, Mrs. Bauer. I still don't think I had the right to call her May. I was at seminary when she passed away. It was a sad day. I went back to Hermiston for the funeral. And I stayed for a couple of weeks. Jack called me. The pastor, he had moved on to a different church, but he had gone back to do her funeral. They were in an interim, and it was okay. They had been together for a long time doing ministry. And there were 19 of us in the room that got called back to. I thought it was just for me. I thought I was the most special one, you know. There were 19 of us in the room, all of us either in seminary or in ministry or at NCC. She gave her time. She gave her talent. That day, Jack says, you don't know it yet, but you all have been getting money from the scholarship fund that she set up years ago. When she passed away, she left her estate in $250,000 cash. It was a scholarship fund. Northwest Christian College and Bright Divinity School. So you all can stay in school. Time, talent, treasure. Oh, may those that go behind us